Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for some of you. We are very pleased to be here as Wageningen University, that we are invited at the International Conference for Youth in Agriculture by IAS, the International Association of Agricultural Students. In fact, we are already working together with IAS for several years. I hope you see the my right screen. Dirk, can you answer me, please? Aha. Okay, yeah, because I saw something else. Sorry, this is just a Zoom and the older generation, I think. I'm sorry. We are already teaming up with IAS for 2 years in organizing challenges together with Wageningen University. Last year, we organized the King Innovation Track on climate adaptation and food systems. This year, we are launching the Nature Based Solutions Challenge. And so happy that youth networks are joining us, amongst others IAS, but also you can see it on the screen. We are working together with the Climate Smart Agriculture Youth Network, TSAYN, with Youth in Landscapes, YIL, the Dutch Youth Council, and the Future for Nature Academy. At the left side of my screen, you see two companies, two Dutch engineering companies, Arcadis and Witteveen and Bos. And they will be our sponsoring and coaching partners in the Nature Based Solutions. So once again, we are happy to be here. I'm here, Dirk, maybe you can see him. I see him in my screen. Maybe you can also see him. He's from Wageningen University. He will give you a presentation later. My name is Mirjam Troot. I work for Wageningen University, but I was also a very active IAS member during my studies. And so it's with much pleasure that I'm here now to give a presentation to you. There will be also other guests here, and not only IAS members, so also a warm welcome to maybe companies that are joining because they are interested in the nature-based solutions. What are we going to do in this 45 minutes? I will start with some explanation on the challenge. And after my presentation, we will go to Dirk van Apeldoorn. He will give a presentation on nature-based solutions in future cropping system. That's very much in line with your conference at the moment. And afterwards, there's time for questions. In the meantime, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat already. We try to answer them during the webinar, but also afterwards, we will pick some out. So the Nature-Based Solutions Challenge, what is it all about? It's, Nature-Based Solutions, you will hear more in Dirk van Apeldoorn's lecture about it. If you want to join the challenge, you will think of a problem in your own area or in another area, but it should be a plot that is physical, that is not big maybe because it's project, it's on project based. You address a problem and you contribute to climate, biodiversity and society. And to help you with that, we are organizing several webinars. This one is one of them, but we already organized also a webinar on human and wildlife coexistence in nature and nature-based solutions. You can go to our website. I will put it in the chat later to see more information about it and to get even more inspired in different topics. You can participate in the student challenge with 2 to 5 students, with maximum 1 recent graduate. So there could be a PhD among, but only one. The nice thing about this challenge, I think, is that we will pick 8 teams that will start working from the 10th of May. And they will receive immediately €2,500 plus mentoring from experts. So we really expect you to either build something that we can see or organize an event to tell the people that live in that neighborhood about nature-based solutions and ways to implement them. We did that last year. I don't know if people from the teams of last year are watching in the King Innovation Track. There was a team who built a hydro pan and installed a dripping system and made a program for farmers. So it was like a pilot next to the University of Lithuania. If you are here, welcome. You can put it in the chat if you participated last year and are enthusiastic about it. How can you participate? You have to download a format for a concept note from our website. We will also send next week the recording of this webinar to all of you and the format by email, so you can see that there. Don't send in any other documents because we will not accept them. In the format, you can see how you can write down the why, what, and how of your projects. Of course, we will provide, if you are selected, you are provided with 2,500 euros. So we want to see also budget, a timeline, and a team picture, please, because it's always good to be a little bit more personal and to see what's going on. We will have a panel of experts to select the teams, and you can also read everything back on the website. It's just, this is an important point that we will, I want to highlight it. We will look at the impact of your nature-based solutions projects. We will look at the feasibility of your project, the scalability. So it doesn't have to be big right now, but it should have some potential to roll it out to other countries, to other areas. And last but not least, it should be in line with the 4 guiding principles to enable nature-based solutions to provide sustainable benefits to society. I will put a link in the chat later on to the link to an article. The time path. We had our kickoff event actually already the 22nd of February. That was a webinar with Tim van Hatten. He has prepared a map for the Netherlands in 100 years. We apply nature-based solutions, so it's very visual. And yeah, according to that map, you can visualize, okay, how would my area look in 100 years? And how can we go that way? How do we get politics involved? How do we get government, government politics? How do we get companies involved? How do we get youth involved, etc.? So he gave a webinar about that. It's recorded, and you can look at our website. On the 20th, we have a webinar today of Dirk van Apeldoorn, and the 23rd of March, we have another webinar by Youth in Landscapes. So welcome also to join that. We will put that in our email. The 13th of April is our deadline for submitting the concept notes. And the 10th of May, we have the final selection of the 8 teams that will receive the funding and the coaching. And then all the work starts, of course. In September, there are the finals for the 8 teams. And we are working towards the COP27, the climate summit in Egypt in November. We want to see if we can get the winning team at least involved in the COP27. Yeah, so this is it. If you have any questions, put it in the chat. I will answer them during the webinar and also afterwards. So I want to give the floor to Dirk van Apeldoorn, my colleague at Wageningen University, and he will give a presentation on nature-based solutions in future cropping systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Merel. Let me share my screen. Where's the good one? This one. Yes, I think this is the proper one for you to see. Can you confirm, Merel?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for this invitation. I was happy to get this invitation because 20 years back, I also was a member of EAS. It's also always nice to get an invitation from the past, you might say. But now, today, we're going to talk about the future. And I'm working in the Netherlands, so a lot of my examples will be about Dutch examples, but I hope that I can inspire you worldwide on what we did in the Netherlands. So why am I working with farmers and with biodiversity? And that's basically that I have kids, and my kids are about 10 years old. And when I was 10 years old, I was living in a rural area, and all my neighbors were farmers. And if I now go back to that same area to visit my parents, there are no farmers left. So we lost 2/3 of our farmers in the Netherlands in only 30 years of time. At the same moment, we lost 2/3 of our biodiversity in that area. So all the joy that I experienced while being in a rural area, all the nice butterfly, the birds, that's just gone. It's not there anymore. And when I realized that, I became very sad. So my motivation is to bend the curve so that we have more farmers in the Netherlands and we can again enjoy the countryside. Nevertheless, that will be a difficult challenge. And so if we see the Earth as a spaceship that we are on together all, then we would all kinds of warning signals, lots of red lights that will be beeping. Basically, we are in trouble. And if you look what's causing the problems, then agriculture is one that causes the biggest problems. And the stupid thing for me is that we think, yes, maybe we have to cause this danger because we have to feed the world. But if you look at what we actually produce, it's not good for us. This study was done by scientists that collected all available information about healthy diets. And they said, okay, if we would eat these ingredients at 100%, then we all can get 100 years old. So that would be super healthy. But then what you see is that we produce a lot of animal protein and the starchy vegetables and all things of basically, you might say, the green revolution. And we're missing a lot of fruit, legumes, and nuts, etc. So we are killing our planet and ourselves. So that seems stupid. And also that if you realize that about 70% of the global land use is about producing animal protein. So we really have to rethink what role agriculture has. So also, I saw the previous part of the previous talk. So we are not in an easy time. Many demands are being made to agriculture. And also we see a lot of conflicts for agriculture, so that farmers don't know what to do. And that's basically, we cannot change the current agriculture by just optimization, and we need something big to change. We cannot continue with the current model. We need new models, and that will be your challenge. So what kind of new solutions are out there? So we are in this experiment phase. So and we are causing some chaos. We don't know yet where it will go to, but it's clear that the old way of doing is not an option anymore. And I will introduce you on a nature-based solution, and that's the concept of diversity. And why I say that this is a potential solution, because there is enormous amount of evidence that diversity works for many ecosystem services. So the problems that I said, okay, we have on the globe can be solved by diversity. There's a lot of evidence to do so, but there's not a single solution. And so we don't have any silver bullet. If we do this, then everything will work out. And so we know that a solution that works in the Netherlands is not suitable for Africa or whatsoever. So we always need to be context specific. And also we see that there's a lot of variation. So if you look at profitability, that's something that you might say that's most important. Then yes, on average, diversity will increase your profitability, but we also see in this graph that there is a potential that's way below zero. That means that it's a negative effect. You can also get make more loss, but on the other hand, there's a bump you see here, that it's also possible to have a much higher profit. So it depends what kind of design you make and where you are to reach this. But important message is, it's not only about profitability or yield or whatsoever, and there's much more that we can gain with diversity. So how does diversity work? And this is based on proper ecology. So at the moment, agriculture is able to reach very high yields if you supply a lot of fertilizers, you plow the field, you use pesticides, for example. Basically, what we do is we reduce variation so that it perfectly fits one species of plant. But if you think about natural systems, there's a lot of variation in it, so that's a very environmental gradient. And if we would be able to put the right plant at the right position at the right moment, then we can basically make use of this variation, and you don't need that much of inputs to get still this high yield. So that's basically what we see with it. When you have multiple species of plant in your system, you can still get high yields without the need of inputs. Yield is only one ecosystem service that we're interested in. But the nice thing is that there's not necessarily a trade-off. So you can have yield, but gain about 5% of yield. But I have to admit, this also makes it more difficult. If you start mixing 5 different cultivars, then you might end up that they are not ripening at the same moment. So you get a problem with birds that will start eating your crop while it's not completely ready yet. So there's a trade-off there to, well, what can you design and what do you leave to natural variation? If you start mixing different crops, I want to point attention to legumes. Legumes have many ecosystem services that they can provide. This is a study that we did on what kind of ecosystem services are produced by different legumes and how much they are studied by science. And then you see, yes, we know a lot about this lower left corner. Very few legumes, but actually there are much more. And there are much more ecosystem services that are available. But if you look in this right corner, we are basically in terra incognita. We don't know what the effect will be of using this other legumes and what kind of services they will offer. But I'm pretty sure that they can also increase ecosystem services, because legumes are just amazing what they can do. So we go one step further to more complex use of genes, and that is the use of agroforestry. You can imagine that the tree is pretty much different as a cabbage, as you see in this picture. So you have more different genes in it, so you get a more complex set of genetic diversity in your system. And now go to the other dimension of time. So you can have very simple temporal diversity, you might say, from a crop rotation, the use of cover crops, to relay cropping. And what that is, I will explain you. So we use, again, a lot of scientific data that's available, and we checked if, when we started intercropping, if the crops were sown at the same moment or if they were sown at different moments and harvested. So that's what we call temporal niche differentiation. And an example that you might know is what you see here is the use of white clover in cereals. And basically, after the last time of harrowing or weeding, you just broadcast the clover seeds, and they will remain low till the wheat is harvested, and then you have a clover sward present ready for example, grazing or mowing. And you can do that for many other crops, and the more you are able to pull them out in time, the higher your yield benefit will be. Here you see in this graph, if you just sow them at the same moment, on average you have an 18% increase. If you are able to distinguish them almost completely to one here, you get up to, I think in this graph, it's a 30% yield increase. So there's a benefit of separating it over time. Of course, if you're not in the tropics, but in the more temperate regions, so we cannot grow crops during winter. You can use cover crops. So after your main yield, your main crop, you can use cover crops. You see a nice picture here at the back of this graph. And if you start using cover crops, your carbon sequestration increases. And if you start using mixtures of cover crops, it increases even more. So here we see the benefit of diversity, and especially so if you use this mixture after your normal crop, you can see that you increase your genetic diversity as well enormously. And so here you see already that you can combine different dimensions. So if we think about the long time, so how do you manage your crops? Maybe you know the importance of having a wide crop rotation, so not growing every year the same crop. And that's, for example, important for combating weeds. What we see, if we use all the scientific literature again, is that the number of weed plants decreases if you have a more diverse crop rotation. On the other hand, the wheat biomass does not necessarily decrease. That's also, if you think about an ecological way of thinking, if there is light, if there are nutrients, then yeah, just the wheat will just grow and will develop its biomass. But another nice thing of having a wide crop rotation is that the number of different species increase of wheat, and you would think, okay, why does that matter to have different weeds? The more different weeds, a weed is a weed, I don't want it. But if you have more different weeds, then the chance that the wheat will be very competitive or negative for your crop also becomes smaller. So you will have less yield loss, for example, and you even get benefits because these weeds, they offer all kinds of ecosystem services. So you get intercropping for free, you might say. And now we go to the third dimension of space, going from semi-natural habitats to strip cropping to pixel cropping, and different skill related to it. So maybe you know the use of field margins of flower strips, as you see here. They are very beneficial for pollination or for pest control. And many farms in the Netherlands have been experimenting with this. But what we now know is actually that, yes, they look nice. And if you are measuring in the flower strip, then you will see an enormous amount of insects. But this effect on the crop decreases exponentially with the distance to it. So this effect is only marginal, you might say. If you use these strips not at the edges of your field, but really in your field, then you, of course, you have a double effect. And here you see another example of using space. Let's see if and that is social distancing with crops. Here we had a farmer that has problems with potato late blight, devastating in organic potato production. And what he did, he mixed two different varieties of potatoes just in strips of 6 meters. And one variety is very susceptible to late blight and the other one is not. And you can see the different varieties here by the flowering. But what he did actually with this is that the vulnerable potato plant could not infect the other one. So also what we did during the COVID times, and that you just are putting distance to susceptible people, or in this case susceptible plants, then they cannot infect the other one. And the animation that you saw is basically what the effect of the infestation is. And so you really see that you have a longer time before you have to destroy your crop. So these are just 3 dimensions, but of course, maybe as all students, you are thinking it, okay, I can combine it. And here you get a complex 3D cube that has all kinds of different farming practices in the 3 dimensions. And let me just give you a few examples of some of these practices. So you can use strip cropping and you can start mixing cultivars. And that's what we did here in the Netherlands. So we looked into potato late blight, and you see in the reference this very classical exponential growth of the disease. And this dotted line you see here is basically when we are legally forced to kill the crop, so to stop the growing season. So when it got infected in the reference crop, already after 4 days, we had to kill the crop. If you would do that in 6 meter wide strips, we gain 2 extra days. You say, okay, what are 2 extra days? But potato plants grow about 800 kilograms per hectare per day, and when they are fully covered. So that is already quite substantial for the farmer. But if the farmer would go to 3 meter wide strips, he gains, or she, I maybe should say, gains 11 days. But if you start mixing different cultivars of potatoes, then you can go to 16 or even 21 days. So here you see the effect of stacking different practices. And of course, you might think, I cannot sell my different varieties of potatoes if they are mixed in the row. That has to do on how we currently harvest them. So we have a row harvester, so that cannot be easily separated. But on the other hand, if you have an optic sorting machine, then it becomes very easy. If the potatoes have different colors, then we can separate it. So there are, if you think about the future, there are certainly technologies out there to make this possible. Another extreme form of intercropping is that we are trying is really based on how would nature look like. And there we have on every 50 by 50 centimeter, we have a different crop. So here you see cabbages and cereals and clover and potatoes and leek all growing in a big mixture all together to see what would happen with this kind of system. How would it respond? And my PhD student, Stella, investigated that, and what she saw, she could compare it to 4 different cropping systems in the Netherlands, and she checked how much crop diversity was there. So we have here monoculture, and you have on average a 6% damage of the leaves. But with every step of crop diversity, the amount of damage decreases with 10%. So here you see that if you have 11 different crops or varieties in your field, we had more than halved the damage. So nature is basically controlling it. The important message is, though, is that you don't get at a 0 level of crop damage. Yeah? With nature-based solutions, you have to allow nature to do some damage before it can control it. Current production with no damage is not possible with natural control, basically. Or if you want to stack things, here's a farmer that is doing strip cropping, but he also wanted to have his cows in the strip. So here you see cows grazing in small strips and really putting, according to him, more energy to his production. At least it's giving him much more joy in the field. Here, an example from the tropics that some of you might know, and which is an inspiration for me, that is in tropic farming. And here the farmer is basically using the succession of ecosystems to build up natural capital. So we are not aiming at a stable state, but you're trying to increase your natural capital, and then you can start a new succession. And so that's what you see here. So building up, building up, building up. And here you start a new system, but that is only possible once you have built up the natural capital. So your topic is designing for diversity. And here you see an example. What we did in the Netherlands is near the city of Almere and near the highway. And here we used strip cropping, and it's also an experiment. So you still see some big fields in it, but what is actually important in your design is that it's attractive and to get people enthusiastic about it. So there are very good solutions of zero tillage for your soil, etc., but that's very hard to explain to the public. So make sure that your design is attractive and that it's also that people can understand it. So we put it in between the highway and the city so that many consumers could actually see how their food is produced. And then you have a story to sell, I can almost say. if you start designing, you have to really think carefully, why do you want to mix what? This is work based on a meta-analysis. And here we said, okay, what kind of combinations work well for cabbages? And again, we use all the scientific literature available. And then we found out that bulbs, or onions, you might say, they are a very good neighbor for cabbages. You get a higher yield. So that seems good. And if you start mixing it with living mulches like clover, you get a decrease in yield. However, if you want to have a nice product that you can sell at the market with not so much damage, for example, and a nice size, then the living mulches are the best combination that you can make. And if you want to reduce your pests, then again, either living mulches or the onions are good. So it's really important to think, okay, what is my problem and what's my objective for combining species? And it's not only the objective, but also where you are. So if you are a conventional farmer and you want to go into intercropping, then you will probably see a decrease in productivity, because conventional farmers have become very good in producing crops as well, especially I can say for Europe. So farmers are world champion in growing crops and controlling everything. But if you want to allow some natural processes, like in organic farming, then you really have to use diversity, at least that's in my opinion. So that's important to keep in mind. Okay, in what kind of context will I work? And if you are in organic farming or with low inputs, then definitely diversity works. So let's now think about future farming systems. So in the past, technology determined how we should grow plants. And so technology was in charge. We have been growing plants in rows for ages already, just because we started with a plow. And then it's very easy to grow plants in lines. And also big fields, for example. And it's all based on technology rather than on what a plant wants. But if you want to make use of nature-based solutions on nature, then you have to think, okay, actually, how does a plant wants to grow? What kind of ecology does it need? So let's let ecology inform agronomy rather than technology. And of course, this ecology can inspire technological solutions. So what kind of techniques do we need? And then this technology can facilitate the interaction between ecology and agronomy. So it's not leading anymore, but it's facilitating the growth of healthy crops. So if we think about the role of technology, we come from big fields where machines were the boss. So this is a typical machine of a sugar beet harvester, very big, and it's only coming to your field when you have big fields, because otherwise it's too expensive to get there. And also it only makes it profitable if you have a few different crops, because then you can invest in this very expensive machine. So it's basically encouraging specialization. You can go to strip cropping where we make use of space, you might say, and that one machine can use the other strip. Here you see an example where we harvest the potatoes, where the heavy machine with the keeper is driving over a grass strip. The grass strip is very supportive for the heavy machine. You have no soil damage, so you are saving your soil. But if we look to future systems, you might think of this kind of autonomous small-scale systems that can really manage plant by plant and don't need big fields of the same anymore. And the stupid thing for me is that, so this robot that you see here was developed for monocultures, but if we really tap into the creativity, what new technology can do, then we can work with these high diversity systems. And now it's up to you. I found this very shocking. This was recently published in Science, and I guess and this is about how much the temperature will increase with climate change will be expected, and what the chances will be that you will experience heat waves of crop failures or etc. And I am from the 80s, so even if we just increase 1.5 degrees, I will have 2 to 3 crop failures. But you, the young population, my guess is about in 2000, it's pretty certain there will be major events, drastic events. So we really need new solutions. So please come up with good solutions. We need you. Finalizing, thinking about nature, natural systems are diverse. Diversity can be used in agriculture. The management of diversity requires smart design, and your technology that you want to use should be supportive rather than leading your design. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dirk. That was really interesting. And I saw also a comment in the chat already, really good slides, top presentation, and I second that. Yeah, so it's time for questions now. You can either ask questions to Dirk or to me about the challenge. And so far, I didn't see a question, but you have some time. There was a question if you can share the slides afterwards, Dirk. You agree with that?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, then I will send it with the mailing in the beginning of next week. Yeah, maybe to start with the questions, I was really wondering, Dirk, just imagine you are still a student at Wageningen University or at Bonn or wherever, and if you wanted to participate in a Nature Based Solutions Challenge with a team of 5 students, and you will have to make up a project and you get €2,500 and a mentor from either Arcadius or Witteveen and Bos. What do you already have an idea on what you would want to do in the project?
What I would do is, well, depending on where you are in the globe, of course, and start thinking, okay, actually, what should be produced? So if you think, okay, about a healthy diet, for example, or if you want to go into more circular systems, okay, what kind of biomass do I need for construction or for energy, etc. So make sure that multiple functions are met. So single solution, well, that's not nature-based. If you have a single solution for one problem, try to think multifunctional, and that one element is supportive to the next element. And so you can do that with crops or with animals, whatever. So that would be my suggestion. And so start stacking these functions or also these elements. And that's, yeah, well, for me, very interesting, but also I think for you, and the exciting part of designing, that you can see, okay, that makes all the different elements work.
Okay, thank you so much. In the meantime, I see a question popping up. Thanks, Dirk, for the clear scenarios. How could we overcome the national policy bottleneck? It's a question from Sakir. I don't know which country. Sakir, can you put in the chat from which country you are? But maybe, Dirk, can you say anything about it?
And I have to admit that national policies are still focused on monocultures, on simplicity. So if farmers want to start with diversity, they face all kinds of problems with registration and legislation. So sometimes, yeah, you can start mixing without telling them. So that some farmers start doing that. They started mixed cropping of cereals, and they just told the government, okay, we used cereals, and they didn't tell that they were doing it. But on the other hand, you want to be, of course, of knowledge of doing that. And I think we have a good story. And policymakers are, in general, they like good stories. And especially if you have multifunctionality and you engage with the public, then a lot more is possible than if you just stick to the rules. So probably you will get an exception, and then you start, yeah, it starts rolling. We only started with this work in 2010 with the very first experiments, and now we have 50 farmers practicing it and government pushing it a lot.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I see that Sakir is from Bangladesh, and also he studied at Wageningen University. So good to have some alumni here also. Yeah, it's a different situation, of course, in Bangladesh. So happy if you can also share some info if you have, Sakir, in the chat. There is a question from Brazil, from Gabriela. Here in Brazil, this approach will be easily bought because students still don't believe agroecology. Okay, but this we heard today in this presentation, they will believe. Okay, so it's an inspiration to you in Brazil. That's also the idea of these webinars, that we inspire you, and also, but it's also interactive. So please, if you have remarks from Brazil, put them in the chat.
Yeah, and it's also Laguna Blanca, I think that's in Argentina, and they use also strip cropping. And so it is possible. And so the nice thing is, with proper design, it doesn't take more time. So you still can work efficiently. It's not going back to the old times with the machinery, but making smart use of machinery.
In fact, yesterday we also organized a webinar from WUR Student Challenges on pixel farming. A company in the Netherlands. There should be a recording. Maybe I can also add that to the email next week.
Yeah, they are really people that aren't into the future, working with technology, and also
yes,
a new role
and,
for agriculture.
So there's like a campus in the Netherlands where they apply the pixel farming. So it's really on very small plots with consumers. So there's a whole system around it, but they are preparing machinery for those plots. So I will send you the link. It's they have a challenge also for students actually to build these robots and really apply things on a very small scale.
Yeah,
so,
I also would argue to read the paper that I had on the new role for technology. So it doesn't need to be a robot. So really think about agroecology and what kind of technology is needed. It's not only artificial intelligence, etc.
Okay, thanks for the addition. Yeah, if we can put a link in the email also. So we will prepare that next week. So yeah, I guess it's time. It's 9:47 in the Netherlands. I want to thank Dirk for his presentation, and I think everybody enjoyed it and learned a lot, and also myself. I want to encourage all students to apply for the Nature Based Solutions Challenge, and I'm looking forward to see all your proposals. And IAS, thank you so much for having us at your International Conference for Youth and Agriculture. And well, see you next time.
Sorry, Dirk, can I ask a question to you?
Oh, I don't know if Dirk is still here.
Yeah, I don't know.
I am still here. Okay, I'm not sure if there's time. For me, it's okay, but I don't know.
Okay, so we have a little bit of after time. I think at 10 the program of IA starts again. Or there's even a break. Ahead. So yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So my question is, you say that if you are using a conventional agriculture like intercropping and increasing biodiversity will probably decrease the productivity. So I come from Italy and I studying also in Wageningen. So how can we convince like farmers to change their system? Because we cannot expect that they just want to save the world and therefore they will lose their income because it's already low, the income of agriculture. So.
Yeah, so I hear that a lot, so that we are already in problems, so why should we change? But the world will change for them, and we cannot continue on what we have been doing. And so you're in Italy, so it's the same European rules. A lot of the pesticides that they are currently using will be banned, and so they cannot use it anymore. So if you then still want to grow crops, you need to do it differently. We cannot expect that chemistry will save us in that respect, and we have to trust nature. And so they have to change anyway, and it offers, I think, an opportunity for farmers. And so I was giving a course yesterday to farmers, and the first reaction to many farmers is yes, but I think that if you start doing something new, also new opportunities arise, and that we see actually with some farmers that started changing, that they have new market opportunities and they have a secure future rather than going down. And so they have bent this curve, at least for themselves, that they can give the farm to the next generation. Does it
Okay,
answer your question, Gabriel? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so now we are still here. There's also a question of Marius. It's in the chat, but I also see Marius on screen. So if you want to speak up, that's also fine, Marius.
Have you read it, Dirk?
Yeah, I've read it. So the question is of course, experiments are nice, but how can we accelerate it and make it happen?
Yeah.
And basically, it's about creating a perfect storm. So that you force the very big things to change, and that's inspiration. And so showing people that it is possible. It's about like these challenges that the youth is taking over. They don't accept old solutions anymore, and they require change from their politicians. Get the citizens and the consumers with that. So agriculture, I think it changed in the Netherlands that the countryside is from everyone and not just from the farmer. So they have to provide multiple services, and then once you start, okay, we are supporting the farmers, then you can get this acceleration going. That's at least my experience. I don't if it will work everywhere, but that's what at least it's working in the Netherlands.
Yeah, thank you. And what are your ideas about how technology can be stimulated to do these things that are already taken up and being inspired by students and youngsters?
Yeah, well, I'm preaching indeed to the same public. So this technology has been forcing how agriculture should work, but if we then indeed start designing technology for systems that can be, rather than having, now they have a solution and then looking for a problem, you might say, and I've turned that around. So we want to have very diverse systems, and what kind of technology do we need then? And then, yeah, my experience, students like here are crucial to get inspired for new things, and they don't carry the weight that we do.
Exactly. Yeah, I fully agree.
Okay, there's one more question from Safira from Indonesia. Are you still here, Safira?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, you have a very interesting question. You want to join the challenge on nature-based solutions, but your question is how waste management can be connected to biodiversity. Do you have an answer to that? It's
definitely. So in nature, there's no waste. And also, if you think about the circular economy, so we have to redefine, of course, what is waste. And a lot of current waste that... Mute Mazur, because so if you think about waste management, I'm not sure if it's about solid waste or urban waste, but if you think about urban waste, there's a lot of organic materials in it with very valuable resources in it. And so you can use it to make energy out of it by use of bacteria, or you can use it even to, there's some people now working with urban waste and solar panels, and together they can create proteins. So bacteria are fed with the electricity and the urban waste, and they make proteins that you can eat. You make a protein shake of it. So I would indeed look into, okay, how is nature dealing with waste or with residues, you might say, and then it's a lot about recycling on the proper way, in smart waste.
Okay, I hope this is helpful, Safira.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. In the meantime, if you have one last question, then please put it in the chat, and otherwise we will end this session. I see a thank you from Safira, and well, I want to thank all participants and Dirk once more And have a good conference still for the coming weekend.
Yeah, you all.
Thank you, Pradina, for being our host.
Thank you, Mirjam. Thank you, Apeldoorn. So we will move to the next session. We will have a break for